This is the Happy Days video tutorial for the Devon wash bag with lace zip. This is how we make it. Let's make. And this is what you'll need. Fabric for the outer, fabric for the tab, fabric for the handle, fabric for the lining, a lace edge zip and some interfacing. And this is how we make it. Add your iron-on interfacing to the back of all your outer fabrics, as I've done. I'm starting by making the handle and the tab. They're both made in exactly the same way. We'll start by making the tab. Place your tab fabrics right sides down so you're looking at the back, the piece with the interfacing on, and then fold it in half lengthways and take it over to your iron and press. I've pressed all along. Now I'm going to open it out and using that crease line I've just formed, take this edge and place it on that centre crease, and take this edge and place it on the centre crease at the same time and press. I've pressed, and the final fold is this edge over to this edge, line it all up and then add a few clips. Now I'm going to take it over the sewing machine and I'm going to top stitch along this edge, fairly close to the edge, and along this edge. I've top stitched along each edge and I've measured and I've cut into two. I've made the handle in exactly the same way, but I won't be cutting this time. Put the handle and the tabs to one side for the moment. Place one outer and one lining, right sides up, and add your fusible interfacing to the outer. Then place your lining right sides together on top. If you are using directional fabric, this is the top of your bag, so the pattern will have to go that way. Line everything up and then add a row of clips along the top. I've added my clips and now I'm going to take it over to the sewing machine and use a 1/4 inch seam allowance. So all the way across, so I'll be joining the lining to the outer. I've sewn all the way across, joining the lining to the outer, and now I'm going to do the same for the other outer and lining. I've now joined the outer to the lining for both pieces, and now I'm going to take it over to the iron and press open the seams. I've pressed open the seam and now I'm going to place the outer on top of the lining, line up all the seams, the sides, and then press. I've pressed all along and now I'm going to take it over the sewing machine and I'm going to top stitch fairly close to the edge of this fold all the way along. I've top stitched quite close to the edge all along, and I'm going to repeat this for the other pieces of fabric. The next bit's optional, but I'm going to use some of this wash away zipper tape. I find it invaluable, especially for adding the lace zips. I'm going to add a line of this zipper tape along the edge of my bag. I've added my zipper tape and I'm going to do exactly the same for the other piece. We're now going to attach the zipper. I've left the backing paper on the back of my zipper tape just so it doesn't stick to my zip while I'm showing you. Take your zip and make sure that you're looking at the right side of it, so you're looking at the pulley, and then place the edge, the lacy edge, on top of your zipper tape that you've just put on. Obviously the backing paper will be removed, and then place it down. I'm making sure that the edge, the scalloped edge of the zip, lines up to the edge of the zipper tape. I've removed the backing paper and I've stuck my zip down, and as you can see, there's still room to open the zip. I'm now going to take it over to the sewing machine and I'm going to put my zipper foot on, and I'm going to sew as normal, as we do normally for zips, all the way down. Ensure that you're using complementary coloured cotton when you sew along here, because you will be seeing these stitches in the final make. I've sewn all the way along using white cotton to complement the colour of my zip, and now we're going to add the other side. I'm adding the other side, and as I did before, I've left the backing paper on just for demonstration purposes. Take your zip exactly the same as we did before and place it on top of the zipper tape. I've made sure that the bottom edge, my scalloped edge of my zip, lines up with the bottom edge of my zipper tape, and I've also made sure that it lines up all along these side edges. And once again, I'm going to put my zipper foot on and I'm going to sew all along. Both sides of the zip are now sewn on. Open your zipper to pull just a little way from this edge, and I'm going to take it over the sewing machine and I'm going to just tack across just to keep the teeth together. I've tacked my teeth together on this end, and now I'm going to add my tab. Fold your tab in half and place the raw edge against the raw edge of your bag and place it right on top of the zip so it all lines up nice and neat. Add a clip, or you could use pins if you wish. Don't worry about the excess zip, we're going to cut those off in a moment. Now take it over to your sewing machine and relatively close to the raw edge, sew across. I've tacked one tab in, and now I'm going to take the other tab, and as we did before, fold it in half and place the raw edge against the raw edge of your bag, and that's why I put those holding stitches there, just to keep everything together. And place your zipper tab on top so it's nice and lined up with the zip underneath. couple of clips and, as we did before, over to the sewing machine, tack into place. I've added both my tabs. I've ensured that they're pointing downwards, so the folded edge is this side and the raw edge is this side. And now I'm going to cut off the excess zip on both ends. I've cut off both ends of the excess zip. Next, open your zip about halfway, and then we've got to take this edge and place it on top of that edge. So both outers are right sides together. We're going to move the lining out of the way, pull that up, make sure that everything lines up neatly, and add some clips. I've lined up the bottom edge and I've added a few clips. Now I'm going to do the same for the lining, exactly the same. So straighten everything out, line up your fabric, and then add a few clips along the bottom. I've added my clips along the bottom of my lining, and I've left my gap sign to remind me to leave a gap. I'm now going to take it over the sewing machine using a 1/4 inch seam allowance, starting at this point, sew along to the edge of the gap sign and stop, start again and stop, and then do exactly the same for this, the outer, but we're going to sew from this edge all the way across. 1/4 inch seam allowance. I've sewn all along the bottom of the outer and along the lining, and I've remembered to leave my gap for turning later. Now turn it round and, using the zip as your middle, put your hands in, and we've got to straighten it all out. And make sure it's nice and even. And we'll use this bottom seam and the zip that we've made as our guide. And when you're happy with all that you've got it all in the right position, give it a nice press. I've lined everything up and I've made sure that my seams and my zip, everything lines up, and I've pressed it, and I've also, as you can see, opened my seams. I've made sure all my seams line up. I pressed it, and now I'm going to add some clips all along this side and this side. I've pressed it and I've added my clips both sides, and now I'm going to take it over to the sewing machine and use a 1/4 inch seam allowance, sew all the way along this side and stop, and along this side and stop. I've sewn all the way down this side and all the way down this side. Next we're going to box the corners, and for this you'll need your little template that came with your pattern. So cut it out and place it on the fold and on the edge of that line of stitching, as I've done, and then take your heat erasable pen and draw all the way around. I've drawn all the way around it, and as you can see, I've used the line of stitches as the edge of my box corner. I'm going to repeat for all the other 3 corners. Placing my template on the fold, whoops, and these line of stitches that we made. I've drawn all my 4 corners and I've remembered to start from the line of stitching and along the fold. And now I'm going to take my scissors and I'm going to carefully cut these shapes out. You're cutting through all layers of fabric. I've cut all my 4 corners, and now I'm going to go over that row of stitches that we did on this side again, and I'm going to backstitch at the end and sew all the way over the same line of stitches, and when we get to this end, backstitch again. This is to reinforce the box corners, and I'm going to do exactly the same this side. So starting here, backstitch a few times, so all the way along. This is going through all the fabrics, and when you get to this end, backstitch again, and this will give the fabric a lot more strength. I've sewn once again over that row of stitches on this side and this side, and now I'm going to put the handle in, and the handle goes the end where your zipper tab finishes when it's closed. And to check, just have a peep through the gap you've left and visualise it closed. So with mine it would close all the way up to there. So this is the end I'm going to be putting my strap. Take your strap and press in half as I've done, and give it a nice sharp press. This is just to find the centre. Do the same at both ends. I've added a clip to remind me which end my handle's going to go. Next, flip it over so you're looking at the outer of the bag. I'm now going to attach the handle. Take your handle and place it down the corner of the box corner, and using the crease of your handle and the crease of your fabric, line it up and add a clip. I've added a clip, and I'm going to tack quite close to the edge to hold the strap in place. I've tacked the one side of the handle into place, and I've pulled it through the other side. I'm now going to line up this centre crease on my handle and the centre crease here and add a clip, as we did before. I've added a clip, and I've also made sure that the strap isn't twisted. And now, as before, I'm going to tack the handle this side into place. I'm now going to box all the corners, and we'll start by doing the outer one. Pop your fingers inside and bring this centre crease to line up with this top seam. Line up those top edges and add a clip. Pop your lining out the way. and that side as well, line up, add a clip, and add another one in the middle. Now the lining that side we've got to join up, so open up your lining and exactly the same, the centre crease of the back of your lining and the centre top seam, line up, and using those clips you've just used, place them on top. Take your time with this, and you should then have two corners together. And now we're going to take it over the sewing machine, 1/4 inch seam allowance, sew all the way across. I've sewn all the way across, and now I'm going to repeat for the other side. So as we did before, line up this centre seam with the top seam on the outer fabric I'm working on. Line up these top raw edges, add a clip, now I'm going to do the lining. So exactly the same, this centre crease has got to go in the middle, and using those clips, pop them on there as well. And as we did before, take over to the sewing machine and sew all the way across. I've sewn all the way across, so that's the box corners finished, the end with the handle. I'm now going to work on this end. I've turned it round, so I'm working on the other end, and exactly the same, boxing the corners, open out. This centre crease has got to meet up with this centre seam, pull apart, and ensure that the raw edge nice and straight. Pop a clip on, and again for this end. And I'll put one in the middle. Now I'm going to box the lining. Get your lining, twist it round so this centre seam meets this middle seam, and we'll be using the clips we used. Just bring it all across. Straighten up your top edges as you're doing that, and the middle one, so you'll have your lining and your outer box corners all joined up with a clip. And as we did before, over to the sewing machine and sew all the way across. I've sewn all the way across. and I'm going to repeat exactly the same for the last corner. I've sewn my final box corner. It is looking a bit of a jumble mess at the moment, but we're going to turn it now the right way out by pulling through the gap we left. I've turned it the right way out. I've pushed out all of the corners and I've sewn up the gap in the lining. And that's your Devon with the lacy zip all finished.